in Riyadh.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me switch up the question a little bit, because look, these two players, unbelievably level in so many different ways, but this format is different. There is no increment. They are playing with mouse speed as well. So here's my question. Under pressure, is one of these players more likely to crack? If they played this match 100 times, do you feel one player might have an edge?
I think historically Maxime Vachier-Lagrave has won more speed chess tournaments. He's won more big titles like the World Blitz Championship in 2021. Anish isn't necessarily known for his speed, although in recent times in the qualifiers for this event, he's done extremely well. I think the one thing we can take away from Jan against Andrei Yasipenko is that the last chance qualifier, or the one who at least participated in that event, did prevail. So maybe Anish's recent practice will help him.
Would you agree with that? With Anish going through the last chance qualifier, Tanya, do we think, therefore, that gives him just that little bit of an edge that could prove decisive?
Anish had a roller coaster run in the last chance qualifiers, right? He took down Pragnananda, he took down Hans Niemann to make it right here, to earn that key to fight in the finals. As the game gets underway, I think this is an absolute 50-50 battle. Both these players, this epic rivalry, they've played against each other so many times. They know each other inside out. This game will be played out in all three phases: the opening, the middle game, and a spectacular endgame.
Well, I am risking not being able to throw it to you guys before we get out of the opening here, because that was the quickest Petrov I've seen in a while. Take it away, folks.
That's right. The Petrov defense, sometimes known as the Russian defense, it has been a staple of Anish Giri's diet since he was a child. It is his pet opening, something he was playing at the age of 12, 13 with consistency and with great results too against top players. It's known to be super solid for black. The pawn structure is no longer symmetrical. White has an isolated pawn in the middle of the board, an IQP, isolated queen's pawn, we would say. And normally that can be either very strong or, in the endgame, very weak.
Now, in principle, if we see a Petrov, are we automatically thinking, okay, we're playing the classical draw with black, win with white game of chess? Or could this be something? Is it too early to make that assertion?
It is still early days, but this is one of the more imbalanced Petrovs, I want to say, because you've got these pawn formations which are not symmetrical on the board. There's still something to play for. And this last move, it sort of seems to have handed over the edge to the black pieces. And I think the reason for that is just a healthier pawn formation for black. You've got two pawn islands if you're black, which means less weaknesses compared to the three that white has. A clear target at the center of the board. The black knight's headed towards a square where it can start attacking that weakness you earlier highlighted.
Yeah, and for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, since he does have an isolated pawn in that middle of the board there, he needs to compensate with energetic play. He needs to get his pieces forward, he needs to attack, he needs to play on the front foot. Because simply, Anish Giri here, long-term, is doing very well. Any endgames will suit black down to a T. And the clock situation also on Anish's side right now. So great start for the player with the black pieces.
Now, I saw some really quick play earlier, so I'm going to ask this question as quick as I can. I'm going to let whoever wants to jump in answer it. We mentioned the isolated queen's pawn. Who wants to talk for our viewers about what this actually means in the short term and long term? Because that pawn does look really lonely in the middle of the board, or it could be the absolute vanguard of an amazing piercing attack. How do you tell whether it's good or bad?
Yeah, white's pawn on d5, we'll highlight it here in the middle. It controls a lot of squares, it takes a lot of space, it's in black's half of the board. It also makes sure that the pieces around it gain activity. The white knight was kind of indirectly attacking a pawn once the black knight had been removed. The white knight might jump in if this black pawn ever disappears. It just gives you launch pads. The problem is it could become weak. We could imagine a black knight coming and just gobbling up this pawn, especially if the queens are off the board. There aren't too many defenders of it. So short term, great. Long term, bad.
So how do we neutralize that? What are we thinking if we're Anish Giri right now in the long term?
Well, for Anish, it's pretty clear, right? You want to start getting that piece activity in. We see the knight jumps that right now Maxime Vachier-Lagrave has on the board with the knight further trying to get into that center. Looking good, the a5 knight also tying down Anish's rook to defend for the black pieces. For Anish Giri in this position, you want to get your own knight closer to the weakness that was earlier highlighted. He does take a pause right now, trying to understand what is the right square. And the confusion, I think, is that f6 spot. If we highlight that, whether the bishop lands there or the knight. Two very tempting options, and I think that's what's on Anish Giri's radar right now.
Yeah, it's a fork in the road. The black knight either goes pawn hunting, that's very direct, very ambitious, or the black bishop just moves out the way. It actually goes the other way, keeping that square vacant. The rooks might now be traded, and we will head towards an endgame. Very solid again from Anish Giri. The computer says 0.0, the engine, the bar locked, undecided in the middle. I think that perfectly reflects the actual position here.
You know, we spoke about the styles of these players and how this matchup, just given the head-to-head throughout their rivalry, is so 50-50, and I think it comes down to the kind of position that appears out of the opening. If we get more chaotic, more intuitively attacking positions, perhaps that's where Maxime Vachier-Lagrave would have the edge. But this is Anish Giri's position for breakfast, lunch and dinner. It's solid, he's in control right now, no big weaknesses. There is a threat on the board that he needs to watch out though. Maxime's knight jumping further on, attacking a pawn on the flank, the a7-1 under threat.
Those knights looked menacing. I spent a good couple of seconds busy negotiating my way through the potential blunder that was one of the knights to c6, and I was desperately trying to make that work as white. I don't think I could, but those knights, like even the knight on the rim on a5, is actually looking like a huge thorn in black's side right now. On the other hand, if black manages to solve that problem, bishop looks reasonably well placed to rake across the board. There's flexibility with the dark squared bishop. The other minor pieces, they look okay for Anish.
Yeah, everything looks okay if you can fend off the immediate threats, but momentum is definitely on white's side. We talk about threats, that's the side who is kind of building the initiative, and it's definitely MVL trying to put Anish on the back foot. Just a couple of minutes ago, Anish was a minute up on the clock. Now he's a minute and a half down almost, and that again reflects the trend of the game.
And it's because there's a big question on the board, right? It's not just one pawn that's under attack. It's actually two pawns that are being threatened right now with the knight that's moved forward, the a7, the c7 pawn. So Anish needs to find a move that stops both or blocks the attack on both. We see the players head in hand, and I'm trying to figure it out. What are the ways that you can actually keep your material intact here if you're Anish Giri right now?
So I'm embarrassed because I feel like I dismissed the move that they might play, because I was thinking there's no way you'd play bishop c5. I'd be so afraid of a3 and b4 coming in. You're not going to play that bishop out there to try and hold this, are you? But maybe that's the way forward.
Yeah, only one move to stop going down a pawn here for Anish Giri, and that is to bring the black dark squared bishop out to c5 to block the white rook's line and to cover the pawn in the corner. No, Anish sacrifices a pawn. He jumps forward with his knight. Problem is, for the white knight now, you have a choice of two. No matter where you go, there might be no way back home. Very committal decision here. Either way for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave.
And he'll probably have to burn the clock on those decisions. It's just so tempting to go pawn hunting, to go pawn grabbing right now. But is your knight too far gone in that place? Is there no way home? Then for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave's knight, I really liked, even though Anish Giri did not find the move that you were talking about, which felt like it would fend off the threats that we were talking about, I think he's found a very practical decision. You know, he took his time. Now he's sort of tempting Maxime into those dangerous waters. What do you think? Does Maxime take the bait?
He's so ambitious, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. I grew up with him, and he's always been the type of player to kind of start games in this fashion, slight advantage, and then he tries to take risks to go for it. Rook takes pawn, given a question mark. And look at this, the white knight, white bishop, they're all overloaded. That white rook might have to give itself up. Look at this, a transition here. White wins a rook. In return, black gets a bishop and knight, but white has so many pawns in this position.
Was that all forced? It felt like someone highlighted the queen side and hit the delete key there. What on earth just happened?
Everything hoovered off the board there. All the pawns gone. It was a tactical tsunami, a sequence of moves, and this is the material imbalance that we've got right now. A rook and three pawns ready to push up the board against the two minor pieces. Now, if you're playing black, if you're the side with the minor pieces, you need to combine an attack against the white king. That is where your compensation lies. Any endgames, get the queens off the board. It's advantage Maxime Vachier-Lagrave.
Yep, those white pawns are sprinting forwards, and for white, the plan is easy. In a quick game like this one with 7 minutes versus 5, I think in practical terms, white is doing very well here. Anish Giri, he needs to do something he's not necessarily known for, Tanya. He needs to go for the white king, but there we go. Very principled. Black has the queen, black has a knight, and two bishops. The white king doesn't have too many defenders around it.
That is step one if you want to get to Maxime's king, lining up his queen against that king on the same file. And what he's threatening is to slide the bishop over, hit the queen, try and come in with some knight checks. There are immediate threats that Maxime needs to take care of. He can't just keep pushing those pawns, no matter how tempting they are. David, this is a 3-result game.
Great move from Anish Giri on the previous turn, bringing out the black queen, and great response by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Blocking the dart squares. White has no dart squared bishop, so the white pawns around its king are trying to hold that color complex right now. Still looks scary, though. The black knight is going to start jumping soon.
The imbalances in this position are fascinating because you can see the pawns on the queen side for white with absolutely no opposition from the black pieces. On the other hand, I'm looking at the position of black's minor pieces and the queen, and I'm going, hang on a second, Tanya, this is all pointing rather menacingly at the king side, and there's potential for f3 to become weak as well. It feels like whoever lifts off the gas first, if you like, and loses that initiative might lose the game, and it's almost a game of chicken now, and people keep raising the stakes.
You know, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave for Team Vitality here. He's playing with all that vitality with his pawns, trying to get them rolling. But Anish is making no secret of going for that king on those light squares that you're talking about. The bishop could slide over, threatening that big check on the board. But what Anish is relying on is the attack. What Maxime is relying on is trying to trade those light squared bishop to make sure there are no checks. Once again, using that light squared bishop to stop the knight from jumping into the game.
Yeah, bishop controls light squares, pawns control dark squares, and there we go. We see Anish on the screen there dropping his knight back. He looked like he wanted to move it forward, but this is definitely one of those games where the eval bar is deceptive. It's going to swing one way or the other very, very soon. A draw, by far the least likely outcome in this game.
Let's talk about how the eval bar is likely to swing, because I'm seeing one player soon with double the time of the other. 6 minutes 36 seconds, pardon me, for MGL. Plays 3 minutes 15 for Anish Giri right now. Tanya, the clock here could be decisive.
It's the biggest factor in the game. I mean, 3 minutes touching that mark with your opponent, 6.5 minutes, and the pawns rolling up the board. Bringing your queen back is not an attacking move. And look at that. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave sets up a trap right now. You cannot pick up that pawn.
Yeah, that white pawn is poisoned. It's only 2 squares away from touchdown as well. A new queen could land on the board. The black queen couldn't take it, as the white rook would have jumped out of the way. Let's just go back one move, quick action replay. Queen takes pawn here, would have lost due to some X-ray action. The white rook would have jumped forward with a check, given itself up, and the black queen would have fallen. This white pawn, if we go back to the game, is going to be the MVP potentially for MVL.
Love it. This is now looking like a lot of pressure is being applied by MVL with the white pieces. Don't forget, of course, both players will have the opportunity to play again with colors reversed, so even if it's a decisive victory in game 1, you could end up with fates reversed and it still goes to an Armageddon game. But right now, Anish Giri having to defend with half the time on the clock, it's scary.
And like we said, you know, it is about getting to Maxime Vachier-Lagrave's king. But with the queen stuck on the back rank for black, how are you even setting up those checkmating ideas? If you try to slide over your king to h3, trying to threaten the kiss of that checkmate, the bishop in the center of the board is hanging, just not giving enough time. Not only attacking the bishop, but assisting that a-pawn to move one step forward in the game next.
And a huge hidden threat, just to point out, if the black bishop in the center moves, runs out the way, rook takes bishop is a nice short-term sacrifice due to the fact that the white queen comes to the top of the board, check, wins the black knight on the next move. This game is only getting more complicated. Anish Giri throwing in a last-minute gamble here, but this knight check can be captured. Let's see what unfolds. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, he needs to be quick, he needs to be accurate.
Wow, and now there's a big threat that black has on the board, right? The kiss of that checkmate that we keep pointing out. The black queen is ready to swoop into that h3 square, and there'll be no defense. So
love it.
Maxime Vachier-Lagrave continues to put the pressure on the light squared bishop, not giving Anish the time.
Nail in the coffin there, queen f4. It's targeting the bishop on f3. Also, it's looking after that b8 square, where MVL is looking to push the rook to the back rank, skewering the queen to the king. I don't think there's any coming back from this.
That was the key move, the bone cruncher. Double threat here, double attack. Anish Giri with 2 minutes left. Not enough. He needs a miracle to escape. One of the black bishops likely to fall. Either that, or it's your queen that's doomed. Anish Giri with a kind of blink there, double blink. He knows he's about to resign.
And that shake of head spoke volumes by Anish Giri. He knows that this double threat is pretty much the end of the game. You can either save your bishop or your queen, but either ways, that would end for black. It's only delaying the inevitable. Loses both the bishop. He's about to pick up the rook with this check, but look at those beautiful Maxime Vachier-Lagrave's pawns moving up the board.
Exactly. I mean, even once the rook falls, you can play a7. And unfortunately, queen b8 is a check. There's so many different ways now that white can try and finish off the game.
He's going to resign. I think so. Anish, over the next, this might be the moment. Gives a check. The white king is about to march up the board.
These are what we call spite checks. You just throw in a couple of checks, kind of come to terms with the fact you're about to lose this game, and we will see the end of the first encounter. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave taking the lead, but he still needs to be slightly careful. Goes forward with his king. King's in the center of the board. Again, we recommend not to do it usually, but here black just doesn't have enough attacking ammo.
And that's because White's queen will block, will play the bridge in this checking party, as Anish only hope is to keep attacking the white king. Now the pawn to the defense. The king about to step back. Notice how the white queen also beautifully defends the gem and glory in White's position, the a7 pawn.
Yeah, you could give Anish Giri 1 hour here and he would not save this game. 1 minute. This makes it hopeless. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, he's ruthless in these types of positions. He's known as the professor, the calculator. With his mathematical degree, he has worked out how to convert this to a win.
The clock is least of Anish Giri's troubles here. And just the way masterfully Maxime is combining the queen and king at the center of the board, defending the pawns, he's now going to step up with his queen, potentially block the check. He could also come back with the king, all plenty of options, but what's most impressive has been his time management. 4 minutes, 20 seconds in a completely winning position. The king keeps going up the board.
Yeah, efficient. He's done it all correctly. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, Giri still fighting on desperately. A check. The checks are drying up though. The white king is going to hide behind its queen, behind its own pawns maybe, and that will spell the end. As soon as the checks dry up, game over.
That's when the handshakes will happen, and I think we're very close. I actually do not see a check in this position, which is going to force either the handshakes or Anish Giri's queen to step back in defense. And he gives up.
MVL, a comfortable conversion at the end in game number 1 with the white pieces. Anish Giri now very much on the back foot. That said, has got the white pieces in game number 2, an opportunity to equalize and take this match to Armageddon in this group of life, I think we want to call it, where literally any player can step through. And all of that struggle, to be honest, was very much through the middle game. Yes, okay, the last 10 or 12 moves looked extremely one-sided, but that battle was really won or lost in the tactical complications in the middle of that game.
Yeah, Maxime, he pressed the chaos button at some point. He grabbed a pawn, transformed his position instead of a static, slow, grindy advantage into pure dynamism. And Anish Giri there, looking at his opponent, couldn't keep up. He knew that the clock was never on his side, and unfortunately the position as well started to drift away, but very impressive MVL.
So impressive. Excellent play by the Frenchman with 3 names, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. You know, he had the tactical ideas when they presented themselves, always ready to take it. Also countering the defenses here, just the way he handled the checks coming in towards the king, finding the trade and sliding his queen over, the double attacks. It was a perfect combination of strategic play against activity here, and the final blow was the move that was played in that moment by the white pieces. Flawless by Maxime.
It's very much spinning plates when you're in Maxime's position, right? You will have noticed knight f3 check many, many moves ago, and every single time you make a move, you go, can this be played in response? And that's fine, that's one move. But when there's 5 possible moves that Anish could unleash at any moment, you always have to make sure you've got it all covered. And it felt like MVL just spun those plates really well. Yeah,
I love the rhymes there. What can Anish unleash? And the flawless Frenchman, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, he had definitely calculated 4, 5, maybe even 6 moves ahead in that variation in order to win a piece and go into that decisive endgame. And it looks like the players are itching to get going with game 2. Anish with the white pieces is a dangerous beast, an opening specialist. I'm not going to write him off yet.
Both these players, they're opening walls. They're the biggest theoreticians, 2 of the biggest theoreticians of their generation. And I think it's going to be so much about the position that comes into play. Anish, traditionally a very solid player, but in recent years, he's added a sharper edge to his game. And I think he needs to get that. He needs to get those complicated battles where there's an opportunity for both players to go wrong if he's looking for a comeback win in this one.
Now, heading into game number 2, Tanya, we said before the start of the match that MVL, the player more likely to hit the chaos button, as we call it. Anish, extremely calm and composed in all situations. Does he have to break out of that mold now and hit some of that chaos button himself?
I would think so, because yes, Maxime is the tactical beast, but he's also got a more universal style of play. And as the players are ready, they're set. I think that's exactly what Anish will be looking for with white as early as possible. Maximize your chances. Don't go for the safety first approach. Don't be cautious early on. And as soon as you can, make it muddy on the board.
All right. Well, Anish now being pressured to make it muddy with the white pieces. Let's see how it goes. Knight F3, B3 this time around.
Yeah, and cool fun fact here, the players were so impatient to get game 2 going that they started prematurely. We had to abort that one, and we go again. But these are the exact moves they played last time as well. And, a short think here for Anish Giri, who develops his bishop. Not the most direct of openings here, Tanya.
Absolutely, and I think apart from what the strategy Anish will have with the white pieces in this one, it's also going to be time management. He was behind on the clock for the majority of the game, you know, under 1 minute in that previous game and unable to defend despite having some complication and despite having the fight in that material imbalance. So extremely important for Anish to keep the pace on the clock.
All right, well, let me ask both of you a question in principle. Because you're playing 2 games back-to-back like this, it's not like you can go away and take a look at your database and sort of plan some new opening ideas. So you have to prepare and you have to get ready with what you've got in the bank already. Knowing that, what are some other techniques other than opening that you can have to keep controlling your time? Is there something else that you can do other than database prep?
Well, there are other things. I think players often do rely, especially Anish, on this opening prep. There are systems, though. He's gone for something non-direct. I think he just wants to keep the tension, get in the flow, build his way into this game. In the previous encounter, we saw how speedy both players were in the first 10, 15 moves.
Sure.
We kind of blinked, and they were already into the middle game. Here, it's going to be all pieces on the board and maximum tension. Anish playing the first dozen or so moves here super quickly. Very different nature of the game. So if you can't rely on knocking your opponent out in the opening, at least test them in a different style of position.
So lots of tension here, nice and positional. We finally see a capture in the middle of the board. We have the pawns getting traded on the e-file. The pawn structure still looks identical for both players. Are we able to now ascertain, okay, this is what the kind of theme going into the middle game would be, whether white or black or both are going to be pressing on opposite sides of the board? What do we think we're looking at here?
Yeah, traditionally we would call this setup that white has gone for the King's Indian attack. That's mirrored by the King's Indian defense on the black side, where you have a light squared bishop in front of your king. You have this nice, healthy pawn structure. Usually it is white attacking on the king side, the flank that both kings have castled here. It takes a bit of build-up, though. The knight gets out of the way first, maybe to push some other pawns forward. And yeah, it's very much a case of black trying to stay solid, white trying to make the magic happen.
A lot of piece moves at the center is what I would be predicting here. You know, black lining up the rook on the only open line that we see, the D1 file, as he does right now. White trying to get his knights into the game, jump that other knight as well towards that C4 square. But first, Anish Giri does get his own rook on that line. We might be seeing some trades. But here's the thing, right? A draw is not good enough for Anish. It would be a dead man's draw because he would lose the match regardless. He has to win this game with the white pieces. So the more pieces on the board, not a single minor, not a single major has been traded off, is good for Anish. It's a slow game. It's not a chaotic one. But the idea is get Maxime low on the clock, get him to those final few minutes, and then create the chaos.
Yeah, the question is whether he'll be given that opportunity. Maxime just playing super speedy. Some committal moves by black. We saw a trade of pawns early on. Now the black bishop is coming out, trying to persuade white to push a pawn forward and kick that black bishop away. Then he'll retreat and he'll argue that black's position rock solid, white lacking a plan. The pawn structure is almost symmetrical. That often lends itself to drawish tendencies. So for now, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave relatively happy.
This feels almost like his heart rate should be ice cold. It should be like 55, 60 at the moment for MVL because we have hyped him up. And to be fair, he's got an excellent reputation as that bringer of chaos. But this is very much a, no, you're the one that has to prove you can do something here. I understand that I'm good at bringing the... There is no need for him to do that here, and I think he's making that point maybe to Anish.
Absolutely he is. You know, he's not created any weaknesses in his position. He's playing the slow game. Yes, he's moved the bishop to a diagonal where it pins the knight. It's sort of provoking Anish to gain a tempo by pushing his own pawn, attacking the bishop with that c3 move. But that would block the white dog squared bishop as well.
Sure.
So a lot of give and take going on. Anish doesn't go for the idea. He plays a slow move on the other side. But this might give Maxime some chance to try to make something out of that pin on the central line.
Just so cagey right now. Feels like this is the calm before the storm. Anish, though, has burnt 3 minutes. Maxime likely to try and accelerate the pace of the game, at least on the board, at some point. And then the calculation phase will kick in, where he's notably strong. For now, though, where will the piece trades come? It's very hard to predict, actually. it's very hard to even name a natural move for black.
Well, when I'm taking a look at the activity the pieces have, the light square bishop for black looks like it's in an excellent place with long-term opportunity. The dark squared bishop is menacing and trying to provoke c3. White's bishops also look great. There isn't really that much on the board in terms of piece positioning that you're looking at here going, oh my goodness, I desperately need to improve that. This is just really solid positional stuff.
Yeah, and from my experience, the top players in the world, they're so good and so quick when it comes to calculation. They see things, forceful moves, it's bang, bang, bang. They see the whole variation. But yeah, when it comes to maneuvering, that's when they slow down, all about formulating plans, and Maxime decides he doesn't want the tension any longer. Trying to kick the white knight out of the middle, allowing that white knight to sit on a very active square though, Tanya.
And you mentioned it's the calm before the storm. I think the storm is arriving. With that pawn move, every pawn move has its own set of consequences. A square being left behind, we might be seeing the first imbalance of the game as a knight sort of inviting a minor piece trade to get rid of this monstrous knight on f5. At some point, will Maxime Vachier-Lagrave give up a key bishop in his position is the big question right now.
Knight f8 as well, presumably to reposition that via e6, I would guess, or maybe to come across to g6 if White's attack starts gathering momentum.
Yeah, you've set me up for my favorite rhyme. Knight on f8, there is no mate. You will wait your fate, but yeah, most likely, actually, he wants to bring it forward to the center. Problem is, those two white knights, one of them looking very strong on that f5 square, the other one about to land forward onto c4, attacking black central pawn. This might be the last opportunity black gets to take one of those knights off the board with one of his bishops. Which one, you would ask? That's the question that MVL has to answer himself. But suddenly the clock situation has reversed. And that, again, shows how difficult black's choices are now.
Yeah, and as a chess player, you really don't want both these knights alive on the board, right? Putting so
Sure.
much pressure on black, the central pawn, the king as well. And Maxime continues to make these big pawn moves, these extremely committal pawn moves, because now this one also appears to be giving up a pawn. It feels like a gambit, but the opening up of the files that will happen will give Maxime the chance to recapture.
Yeah, okay, we see a trade of rooks instead. Anish playing a very logical move, trying to attack black's central pawn, but defended. And as Tanya points out, if there is a trade of pawns on b5, the black queen opens up. That c file is going to be key, very important. I don't think you want to kind of get itchy fingers here and do anything on the queen side as Anish Giri.
But the biggest question is, will Maxime give up his bishop for that knight, which is a bit of a nightmare for black currently sitting on f5. You know, the other saying, knight on f5 and we live. So he's got to be feeling good about planting that piece there. If you do that, you're giving up a bishop pair. And that's a big one. You're opening up White's light squared bishop as well. So a huge decision. How much tension can Maxime take, allowing that knight to live on that square?
Well, let me turn the question around a little bit, and I'm perfectly willing to get egg on my face here. I'm going to suggest the knight on f5 is a beast, but it's also the one piece that's like indirect attack for the king right now. Is it the case that maybe MVL doesn't have to think about taking the knight until more pieces get involved in the attack? Does he have time to consider that? And he's not being pressured really into making that decision.
Yeah, I think that's a key thing in chess, like trades, exchanges. They're one of the hardest decisions to make, and often you want to leave it to the last possible moment because then you keep your opponent guessing, then you don't show your hand. And here, Anish is saying, please take my knight, you'll open up my light squares. Maxime's like, no, I'm just going to wait and wait and wait. There we go, improving pieces, and eventually one of the sides is going to blink.
And speaking of trades and blinking, it's not just the tension between the bishop and the knight. There's tension on the left flank as well between the two pawns. You know, both sides want trades on their terms. If White was to go pawn takes pawn, that would actually give Anish Giri a pass on the A file. Pawn takes pawn, thank you very much. The A pawn starts moving forward.
Yep.
On the other hand, if it was Anish to take that decision to grab Maxime's A4 pawn, that would actually help Maxime open up a line for his own rook eventually and a diagonal for his queen to infiltrate on.
For sure. I've got one last question to ask as an idea. Does black have aspirations of playing knight g6 back to e7? Is that a thing?
Yeah, I think long term, any other way of getting rid of that white knight on f5 would be ideal, but in the meantime, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave trading pawns. He was the side to blink first. And look at this, a tactic. He's sacrificed his bishop, jumped in, double exclamation mark given, the first of the day for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. And that is trying to lure the white queen onto where it can be captured. This, yeah, looks like a brilliant idea.
That is incredible stuff. You know, the brilliancy has arrived by the tactical beast right now. Some big brain play here by Maxime. You take that bishop, the knight will capture the central pawn on e4, and the whole board collapses for white. For Anish Giri, the knight will be left hanging, the bishop will be left hanging, and it forces Anish into a think. I wonder if it's too late.
This is amazing. This is like taking the bottom block off of a tower of Jenga or something, because once that pawn on e4 goes, the knight on f5, looking pretty dangerous. Oh, guess what? If you're not careful, you've got knight takes g3 check, you've got knight f2 check, the queen has to get out of the way, and guess what? The bishop on c3 is on prise. That is an absolute octopus of a move. White suddenly has to defend from about 12 threats at once.
Beautiful move. Just quick action replay. Bishop takes pawn. We're looking on the right board here, the analysis board, and the white queen simply cannot recapture. This would be a game-losing, match-losing blunder by Anish Giri. If queen takes bishop, knight takes pawn, and too many threats, black will regain the sacrifice piece with interest. Let's go back to the game where we see Anish try to fight fire with fire. He takes a pawn in the center instead, but suddenly the white pieces look very loose.
And with the rook, the black rook lined up against the white queen, one can start, the spidey senses getting activated here. You're looking at trades, checks, captures, threats. There are no checks in the position. What black is doing right now, what Maxime's doing right now, is calculating all the captures that exist. Does he take the pawn with the bishop? Does he take the knight with the bishop? And he does. Bishop takes knight, opening up a central line. Also now the g3 pawn was hanging. The trades, the flurry comes in. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave with a big edge on the board. And tactics as well, David.
Tactics favoring him. That knight might have to be captured. The white queen attacked, cannot grab the black bishop right now. That bishop is poisoned. Queen takes bishop would allow a knight fork. Black would play knight takes g3 check, hitting the white king, winning the white queen. This could spell the beginning of the end for Anish Giri. He's just fighting for his life, fighting for a draw, but that is not enough in this match.
So was it the case that fighting fire with fire was the fundamental mistake there? Did he have to take a step back, take a breather and say, okay, that's really good. I need to just defend for a bit and consolidate. Is that where it started going wrong?
Yeah, I think he missed this bishop sacrifice first of all, which I think psychologically is tough to recover from. But he needed to just take his foot off the pedal there and just solidify. He still had great activity despite being a pawn down. Now the board is clearing. Things are simplifying, and that only favors black.
And Maxime Vachier-Lagrave is so good at shifting gears, playing in a controlled manner at the start when Anish had that strategic fight. But given that one opportunity to bring up that brilliancy on the board, and it barely took him seconds to spot that game-changing move. Bishop takes pawn, which is the outcome that we see right now being played out. More tactics coming in. And it's so difficult for a player to adapt in their brain. And that's why we see Anish's clock ticking down to under 2.5 minutes as well.
This is proving to be problematic on multiple levels. Their pre-move of the retake, and that, of course, is with check to the king on h1. So we're going to have to deal with that first before anything else comes into play. And as things stand, MVL looking set to go 2-0 here.
That would be a power-packed performance. I mean, he's really on his way. And this sad retreating move was a necessity for Anish, because there were not only the check, but also the ideas of rook capturing that knight at the center of the board. The queen now coming into play by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, attacking the pawn, defended, and look at that beautiful pin. Just multi-purpose moves on every single instance by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave.
Yeah, every single move arriving with a threat, every single move arriving with a check or a capture. Right now, he's spoiled for choice. At the very minimum, he could remove that white knight from the board, get the queens off as well. He's moving towards safety. Black is a full pawn up, a very healthy pawn up. Very hard to imagine Anish Giri winning this endgame, and he is in a must-win situation. I think that would be the most practical way forward for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. He looks locked in right now.
He's such a professional. He knows he's so close. 1 foot in, needs only a draw. He could pick up the pawn with a check, but look how he doesn't do it. He goes towards safety. Instead, a very professional approach. He's calculated the line to the end. He does bring his rook to make sure the a-pawn doesn't move anywhere forward. It's 4 pawns versus 3. That's an extra pawn for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. The only hope for Anish is that a-pawn now.
Yep. Final hurrah for Anish Giri. I am slightly surprised Maxime tried to cash in his advantage this early, but he has worked out that he can force a draw most likely with some knight checks a bit later. For white, it's very hard to find a next move, so black has a few turns to start pushing pawns. If the whole queenside those pawns on that left side disappear. Dead draw at the very minimum for Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. And he jumps in with a check. He's given up all of his material advantage just to force a dead drawn rook endgame.
Again, incredibly clinical there by the Frenchman, giving up that pawn, but he knows how this is done. This is elementary at this level. He's going to get his king out, making sure the black rook defends the a-pawn from moving forward. If the white king comes too close to get that rook out of the way, the whole of the right side of the board will be left hanging.
So it's not necessarily the flashiest move on the board, but it actually is a statement to say, hey, there's an imbalance left in this position. Let me get rid of the knight and bishop and make this as equal as humanly possible, just to drive the point home that there is no opportunity left for you to win this game.
Yeah, his name might be Maxime, short for maximum, but he was going for the minimum there. He just wants the draw, and that black rook is going to step up one square. As Tanya pointed out, that rook is now going to go and grab white's pawns, sitting pretty and undefended on the right flank. And unfortunately, that white a-pawn, Tanya, these rook's pawns, they just run so slow. It's not going to be quick enough for Anish Giri here.
I mean, Anish just has to burn his house down. He shouldn't care about the right side. Use his king. We see one trade. Take that pawn, take the pawn back with your rook, and then you want to start pushing your own king forward, trying to deflect the black rook from defending it. But now Maxime has his own counterplay with the f-pawn eventually moving forward. Eventually, I say, well, the king advances first, hits the rook, which needs to stay connected to the a4 pawn.
Yeah, and that black g-pawn is running. We're going to see king versus king as the most likely outcome here. Again, not good enough for Anish Giri. Maxime calculating whether he can push the g-pawn forward, just trade everything. Cynical, you might say, but very, very effective right now.
And you could say, look, once these trades take place, yes, there are still opportunities for black to win, but like you guys said, it becomes easier to calculate all of that out without the distractions, without the additional elements on the board. And when those don't exist, you're not going to get a player of this caliber messing that up 999 times out of 1,000. That's just going to be a dead draw.
Yeah, this is bullet time for Anish Giri under the 1 minute mark, but the white rook will give itself up for the black pawn. The black rook give itself up for the white pawn. We're heading towards a dead draw here, fully equal, and the players just going through the motions. The clock, not the biggest factor for once here.
And there we see that plan being played out. The white rook will be forced, and it is handshakes. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave takes the match victory.
So that is it. By a scoreline of 1.5 to 0.5, MVL will take the victory in this group, and he moves top of the group for now. Anish Giri, of course, second chance in the lower game in a little bit, but right now it's all about MVL, who moves into the upper bracket game in their group. It will be interesting to see how they manage to fare later on in the tournament.
And it just goes on to show that in these mini matches, best of two, just what an important role, what a key factor that game one plays. If it's decisive, just how incredibly hard it is. Even if you try to create your chances, create your imbalances, as Anish Giri did with the white pieces, but it was this moment that was decisive. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, so sharp, spotting this beautiful tactic.
Now we saw the mutual respect between these two discussing the game afterwards, but ultimately Maxime was just too sharp, too quick. Anish couldn't keep up. Deserved result there as the Frenchman moves on.
And he really gave us a great example in game number 2 especially of when to turn the taps on. I think you mentioned it on air as well, Tanya. It's so amazing to see